Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about tactics. We're going to talk about tactics for dungeoneering parties and parties moving out in the wilderness and how they can move effectively and securely to be safe and maybe die less. And I'm going to show you maybe some things that you can do with your party that will keep you alive a little bit longer in the dungeons. I'm Tristan. This is Heroes in Homebrew. So before we actually look at some different tactics and ways you can arrange your party as they move through the corridors of a dungeon or how they move through the wilderness, as opposed to the regular just order of march single file. There's some things that you can do, but we need to set up some SOPs, some standard operating procedures, and that way you can tell your DM, hey, this is the SOP we're going with, and it'll be a lot faster than just saying, okay, this is the order of march and writing everything down. The DM can know right away. You can give them before the game, like, this is how these procedures are going to work, and you're off and running. So standard operating procedures are things that you always do in certain situations. For instance, if you come to a corner in a hallway, this is the standard operating procedure for the party. And that way you don't have to constantly tell the DM, this is what we're doing. It can be taken as given that that's what the party's going to do. So you're going to set up standard operating procedures for moving down a hallway, for coming to corners, for if you are going into a room, things like that. So as a party, it would be a good idea beforehand, before the game starts, get together and talk about, okay, how do we want to set this up? How do we want to do these things in these certain situations? And that way you can have them all written down and go on and play from there. So I'm going to show you a couple of things that you can do as your party to kind of make things a little bit easier on you. Okay, so here we have just a little dungeon I set up in Owlbear Rodeo just to kind of give you an idea. Now, you don't have to follow these exactly. These are just going to be ideas, thoughts that you can implement and you can modify based on your party makeup, because not every party is going to be the same. They're not all going to have the same number of players. They're not going to have the same number of retainers or the same number of fighters versus magic users and thieves, etc. So, moving down a hallway, you're going to want your strongest guys first. Those are going to be your melee fighters, or the guys who are, most heavily armed. Okay, so we have fighter number 1 and fighter number 2 in a single file. Now next, instead of putting another fighter there, we're going to put, well, I guess he's still a fighter, but we're going to put someone with a ranged weapon. So he's going to move up here, but he's not going to be in direct single file. He's not going to be standing directly behind him. He's going to be standing off to the side so that he can see down the hallway. And that way, if they see something that could be a threat, like a monster or what have you, they can open fire right away with their ranged weapon. So we're going to put our magic user here in the middle, because we want to protect our magic users because they're generally more squishy. There's our magic user. Then we can have another fighter. Now it looks like a large party, but we can assume that we have hirelings, we have mercenaries. Porters we're not going to include in this, but any mercenaries that we've hired to come with us, we can put them into this grouping to give ourselves a larger fighting force, because that's what we hired them for, right? Actually, our rogue, we're going to put our rogue in the front because we want our rogue to be able to find traps. Rogue, fighter, ranged weapon, fighter, magic user, and then we're going to put another ranged fighter in the rear. Our cleric is going to come down here, and then we have another ranged fighter there. So this is one way you can move down the hallway. Set it up so that you have your thief who can find traps. Maybe he's got the 10-foot pole. He's finding traps. The strongest fighter we have is right behind him, easily able to pull him to the back and move up to the front if he needs. We have our ranged fighter here so that he can fire down the hallway. Another fighter ready to pull up into the front as well. Protecting our magic user in the front. Our cleric, who is there whether you need healing, which is not exactly what the clerics are for. They have that power, but they're not supposed to be healers. They're for fighting undead. And another ranged fighter in the back. And then maybe we have a couple of other mercenaries we can keep in the back that are there to push up to the front if we need to. Now, this is a very simple way of kind of protecting yourself as you move down the hallways. However, should we come to a corner, so let's say we're moving down the hallway and the DM says, okay, there's a corner up ahead, it turns right. Now, you don't want to just turn around the corner maybe. What I would do is I would take my two fighters here. I would move the rogue to the back. Even better, I would move these fighters out of the way. And I would bring that second archer up. Then I would position them. The SOP would be, okay, we're going to position the fighters in such a way that we can get around this corner securely. So the way it goes is if you have this corner that's turning to the right, the two archers are going to line up close together, and then they're going to move out together as one, and that way they both see down the hallway, and if there's something there, they can open fire right away. Maybe you'll have a fighter who's in the back throws a torch down the hallway to light up the hallway so that the archers can see. And then once they say, okay, the hallway's clear, or there's a threat, what have you, then you can keep moving. Archer steps to the side, thief comes back out, and then you continue on in your predetermined line. It's very simple. The whole point of it is to make sure that you always have your archers ready to shoot down the hallway if need be. So next, let's say they come to a door. We have our thief here. Now, if we're playing old school rules, doors generally aren't locked. They're just very hard to open. Now, this kind of negates the element of surprise because you can't really push the doors open quietly. They're very hard to open, so they make a lot of noise and they kind of warn everything that's in there. But whoever's best at listening, say if you have an elf or a thief or something like that who can hear very well on the other side of the doors, they can let you know, okay, if there's someone in there or not. What I would do is say 2 or 3 people pushing the door open, and then once they get that door open, you have an archer there to see is there anything inside. If they don't see anything straight down the line, then they can move off to the side. Second archer right behind them moves off to this side, and then you can have your fighters filing in after, and the wizard is always protected because he's in the back out of danger. And now you know that you've come down this hallway and you didn't see anything, so there's very little danger of something coming up behind you. Yes, there are wandering monsters. If you've decided, okay, this room's clear, there's no more combat in here, you move one of your archers out here to take a look down the hallway, and then the magic users can move in. So basically, you're always protecting your front and your flank. So once the actual area of threat is neutralized, you move people back to protect the flank in case of wandering monsters coming up. Once you've decided that this is how we're going to do it, You give it to your dungeon master and say, this is how we're going to run for these situations. So every time there's a hallway, you can say, okay, we're doing our SOP for the hallways, corners, we're doing our SOPs. Not only are you being more secure, but it'll also keep you from being surprised. If I was the dungeon master and I had a party that was telling me, okay, this is how we're going to do it, like all the time, I would say for like a surprise roll, even if they might normally be surprised on a 1 or 2, I'll say, okay, you guys are only going to be surprised on a 1 because you are moving like purposely and you have a plan every time for every situation that comes up. So it's going to be very hard for you guys to be surprised by a monster or what have you. What if we're moving out in the open? Okay, again, out in the open, we normally have order of march, and it's always assumed that you're just moving in a straight line, but there are safer ways to do this. Like in the dungeon, but a little bit different. So maybe you'd want your archer in front, followed by 2 fighters, another archer to the side. I would keep the wizard in the middle, or the magic user in the middle, cleric, and then in the rear, because there's less chance of traps, I would have my rogue and another fighter. And this is how I would move my party through the wild. So basically we are covering both flanks with archers. Obviously they're not going to walk sideways the whole time, but they're always there to be able to watch the sides if anything comes out of nowhere. You have your archer in the front, ready to take the long shot. Your magic user and clerics are protected because they're extremely important. Your magic user is going to be very important for all kinds of situations. Your cleric, in the case of undead, or magical healing if need be. And then your rear is protected by the fighter and the thief. Again, this here is a large party, but we're going to assume that we, again, have hirelings, and then maybe you'll have you can spread it out. If you have porters or whatnot, you can spread this out even further so everyone is kind of further away and your porters are in the middle, because you want to protect your porters. You don't want them to die, because if they feel like they're in danger, then maybe they will bail on you when the time comes, because porters are just carrying your stuff. Yes, they're getting paid, but they're not fighters, so you don't want to leave them out in the open and possibly getting killed or getting in so much danger that they decide this is not worth it. We're out, and then you're stuck with a ton of treasure and no one to carry it for you. So basically it works the same. Now out in the wild, you don't have as many situations like doors and whatnot and hallways. So it's basically about how you're moving through the wilderness. You want to keep guys a little further away, so especially if for whatever reason you get attacked by a troll who throws a boulder, it's going to hit fewer people. Magic spells that have a radius, it's going to hit fewer people. And you're always covering your flanks and you're moving forward. So again, you're super secure, and that's it. You're trading the amount of time that it's taking you to move for security. Yes, you're probably going to move more slowly. It's going to take more rounds to move a distance, especially in the dungeons. But overall, you're going to be safer, and you'll run into less surprises and less problems in the long run. So that's basically it. That's some very basic things that you can do as a party to keep yourselves really safe in the dungeon. It's something that I haven't seen really touched on a lot in a lot of videos, and even during play, the games I've played in, it's always like, okay, what's the order of march? We're in a row, and we're just moving through the dungeon, and there's very little thought put into the actual tactics of how you're going to do things. Yes, people come up with tactics for combat, but what about before the combat? What about keeping your party safe just moving? And I think this will make a huge difference in your game. It's going to keep you safe. It's going to limit surprises. And it's going to let you engage monsters and creatures and enemies from a little further away and maybe do some damage to them before they even get a chance to come to you. That's assuming everything ends in combat, which we all know it doesn't always, especially in the OSR. You have reaction rolls. Maybe the monsters are not going to fight you. Maybe you're going to decide it's better for us to run. But if you're always have that security in the front, then it's going to be even easier for you guys to make that decision. So I hope that was a little interesting for you, and maybe try implementing it in your games. A lot of the videos out there are for Dungeon Masters, and I thought it'd be kind of interesting to do something for the party, see if, something different for the party to do. And that's it for me. Until next time, save a seat for me at your table.